is Figma?
What is UI UX design?
Like Figma? Can I use it for graphic design?
Do I need to know coding? Is it free?
And guys, I've been there. That was me about 4 years ago when I started learning about design and trying to get into Figma and UI UX design. But I didn't exactly know how to start. And honestly, it was very overwhelming. So if you feel that way too, don't worry. In this video, I crafted the ultimate but chill beginner's guide to designing with Figma that I wish I had when I started designing. I know most tutorials are very daunting and serious, so I wanted to make this more lighthearted, approachable, and beginner friendly. Since I started designing, Figma added a whole lot of new features, not only for UI UX designers, but also graphic designers. So I think it's a good tool for any designer who wants easy and intuitive software that's free to use. Okay, so how do you actually start designing in Figma for the first time? Let's find out, y'all. Come on. What is up, guys? I'm gonna be your professor for this video, you know what I'm saying? It feels like I'm on a Zoom call right now. I'll put your screen in a little box in the corner, you know, so you guys can look at yourself. All right, let's get into the lesson, guys. So what you want to do is come hit this create button and create a design file. Everything is created around frames. Frames is basically like your canvas for creating your designs. Since it is meant for making designs for apps, desktops, and other applications, it comes in various different sizes. So what you want to do is click F on your keyboard, and then you'll get all your frame options. You know, you got the phones. We're gonna click the iPhone 16 Pro Max, you know what I'm saying? Boom, it already gets the set dimensions for an iPhone. So down on the bottom, you got your taskbar that has all the things you need to know, and you can click to see what they are. You got the move, you got the hand tool, which just moves around the screen. You got the scale tool, which I really like, where you can move things in proportion. You got the frame button, the section, which is good for when you're done with your designs and you really want to organize, something like that, you know, and then you label them. And next is a very important little folder with a bunch of different tools, which is the shape tools, where you can make a little rectangle. And this is where I want to talk about the difference between a normal rectangle shape layer and a frame. The biggest difference is the rectangle is just a shape that you can change the color to, where you can go to fill. But let's say you want to put another rectangle in it. All right, so you got this blue, you put it on top of the rectangle, you know, nothing happens. Say you want everything to fit inside the confines of a rectangle. You can't really do that with the normal rectangle tool, but what you can do is move it to the frame, and then boom. As the name suggests, it frames the selection. You know, you can put everything in it and it's all within the iPhone frame. In Figma, I feel like you use frames a lot more than actual shape layers. You know, it's like an onion, it has layers. Sometimes you want a frame within a frame. You know, say you want this red box in the white box, but you also want the blue box in the red box, but you can't really have that as a shape layer. So what you can do is you hit Option Command G. Now you put the box in the red box. Why is it not working? You know, why is it not working like the big box? What you want to do, hit the clip content, and that's basically what the frames already have checked already when you put it down. So, but for frames that you make, you have to click that box. Now it's clipped. Boom. Now you got a frame in a frame. And next you got the pen tool, basically like any other design software where you can just make lines, and you can also click and drag to make the Bezier curves. Then you got the pencil tool. I don't really use the pencil tool. Cool if you gotta like mock up like a signature. I don't use it, but it's there if you need it. Next you got the text layer, UI UX design, making apps. You know, you're working with a lot of text. This brings me into one of the more intermediate features. Let's say you have this, and in UI UX design, you use a lot of buttons. You think about apps, so many buttons. Before I show you the easy way, I'll show you like what most people would do. You would have the text, and then you would make another rectangle layer. You would put the text on top of the shape layer. So let me show you how most people would make a button when they're first starting out designing on Figma. They would probably make a shape layer, and then they would take the text tool and type button, and then boom, you know, you got a button. And maybe they would frame it in one selection, but there's an easier way to do it that I personally like doing, and I think is more industry standard. Let's say you type the word button. You click Shift A. It's more than just a shortcut. It unlocks this whole new world called auto layout. It creates a frame around the text layer where you can add padding to the sides, add a fill to change the background, just like the other button. But it has more functionality and easier to use. You know, you can add padding on the top, add padding on the sides, around the corners. Boom. And boom, that already looks like a button that you'll use in an app. So I was thinking, what app would be a good app to demonstrate how to use Figma for design and UI UX prototyping? And I thought the most simplest design would be a meditation app. So using what I already talked about, we can already get started. We can start by adding some text. You can come here to the right bar. You have typography where you can choose between all the fonts. Hit K for the scale tool. Make it a little smaller. What you can do when you're trying to get into the right spot is use the position tools. Boom. We got the title. Let's duplicate it. And what I do do is click Option Shift and then I drag it down to duplicate it. And let's type in button. But before we type in button, in order to make it stay in the middle, you hit the alignment tool to make sure the text is aligned to the middle. So when you type in the new text, it stays in the middle. What do we do when you hit the button? You know, we do the same thing. We hit it with the Shift A for the auto layout and easy, already in a frame. So just change the color. Now that it's in auto layout, we could add some padding around the button, add some rounding to the corners. Go with 20 pixels, snap it back in the middle, boom. Instead of putting an ellipse tool, which is just a circle, I'm gonna put a frame and I'm gonna hold shift when I do it so it stays a perfect square. Then I'm gonna add fill and then I'm gonna round the corners to make a circle. Now that we got the basics, I'm going to introduce you guys to the second tab. Figma has a design tab and a prototyping tab. What is that, you might ask? You click it, nothing's here. But the magic happens when you have two frames and you link them together, you create an interaction. So you can click a button and then something happens and moves you to the new frame, or something happens. And this way you can actually start to prototype apps. So the role of the UI UX designer is to create what an app would look like when it's finished, you know, with all the animation, the designs, and, you know, the people that they're showing click through like it's a real app. So I'm gonna introduce you guys to this feature called Smart Animate, which is the saving grace of Figma, what makes it so good as a prototyping software. What you want to do is do what I did, is duplicate it. You can do the click, hold Option Shift, and then drag to duplicate it. And what's nice about that is when you duplicate it, it keeps all of the names identical between each layer. And that's important when you prototype, which I'll show you guys right now. So I actually forgot to say, but in order for Smart Animate to work, you have to have two different layers on two different screens with the same name. If the names are different, it won't work. You can change the name, but they have to be exactly the same in order for Smart Animate to work. So let's say after you click the button, you want the circle to get bigger. So go back to design, and if you want it bigger, click the K button to scale it up and then put it back in the middle with the align tools. Now that you got two different frames, you can create an animation. So in prototyping, you click this, and you know what's different from the design is that you got these little plus signs, so you can drag from one to another. And on tap, you got all these options, you know, on tap, on drag while hovering, blah blah blah, blah blah blah, blah blah blah. Now we got it on tap, we can preview our design, click, and it gets bigger. You know what I'm saying? And then you can click R to reset your design so you can check it again. Click the screen. Pretty basic. But let's say you want to add a little pizzazz, you know, you want it to look like a real app right off the bat. And it actually doesn't take that much work. So let's get rid of this interaction. And we're going to add it to the button this time. And then we're going to keep it on tap, but in the animation, instead of instant, you got this option called Smart Animate, which is a really cool feature where you can hear the presets. You know, it takes 300 milliseconds to do this animation. I'm not going to fiddle with it too much because this is the default. I'll show you guys what the default shows. Preview the app again, click the button, boom. It adds a little smooth animation to it instead of just popping in and out. Doesn't take a lot of work, you just click Smart Animate, you know what I'm saying? Let's do that again. Woo, that's beautiful. I'm gonna show you guys another technique that is really good to start out with those good habits when creating buttons. Most people, they would think, you know, when I click the button, I want it to change color so the user knows that you clicked on it. So what they would do probably is duplicate another one and then change the color of the button. They would probably prototype it that on this button click, it would go to that. On tap, maybe Smart Animate. Maybe they would dissolve to the next one. They would click this whole screen and then link it to the next screen, but instead of on tap, they would put after delay. That's how they would make an animation like this. Very crude, a lot of screens. You kind of don't want that in a design. So what you can do is you can take this button, you can go up and see this little diamond icon. You know, it's low-key a very beautiful icon. So click that, turns purple. What the freak, bro? This is getting crazy, y'all. Things are changing colors. So what this is, shoot, what is this? I forgot. Shoot, component. So this is a component. What a component is basically you take the design off of the screen that you're working on. It's in its own world. You can tweak it and do little stuff to it and change the color. You can add animations to the button on its own. What you can do is you can go to assets and then find the button, and what you can do is drag it onto your design, boom. And the crazy part is that whatever you do to the component changes all of the instances that you drag this out. You know, you can drag like 500 of them out, and then you could go to this and you could change the button, and then it changes all of them, bro. That is insane, bro. Saves you so much screens, so much work, so much design. And what I like to do is put all of the button interactions and animations inside the component. And what I mean by that is you can add a variant. Oh my gosh, that is crazy. And you could do what I did earlier by changing the color and then going to prototype and then dragging from variant to variant. For buttons, I like to do while pressing, so it only changes color while your thumb is on the button. Do Smart Animate. And then you can click on it as many times as you want. Right now it's not linked to the next page. It's already built in, bro. So now I got my new button that's linked to the component. Anytime in the design, I can switch it up. And I can even just copy and paste it. I don't have to drag it from the side panel. And boom, paste into the next one. And it pastes it exactly where it was. So you don't have to worry about the position if it's the same frame size. And just like a normal button, you can still link it to the next prototype. On tap, Smart Animate. Let's let it take its time. You know, you're breathing. And let's actually make this one smaller so there's more of a difference. And let's see. Boom. That is smooth, guys. That is smooth. Bro, we're already building an app for saving the world, reminding everyone to breathe. And what you can do is you can link this button back to this frame on tap. Yo. Breathe in. Breathe out. Boom, guys, we already made an app. We already made $1 million app. Y'all, if y'all want to make money, y'all are ready, guys. And right now the app is looking a little plain. So I was playing around with the design, changing the colors and stuff. Boom, here it is. Beautiful, beautiful. And all I did for that was basically I changed the color of the background. I changed the color of the circle, which brings me into what you can do. By default, it's set to just a solid color, but what you can do is you have all these options. You have gradient, pattern, image, you can import an image, and a video, which I think you need the pro version, which I don't have. What I did to get this more blush kind of look is I made a gradient. You start off with a linear gradient, but you got these options, which you got diamond, okay, angular, okay, and radial, which is what I use. And I just picked between the two colors. I picked orange and yellow, and that's how I got that nice look. For the prototype, I basically I linked the button. I dragged it to the next frame. I kept it on tab by default, and then I put it to Smart Animate. I put the duration for 2000 milliseconds, so it gets that long gradual fade that I would expect from a meditation app. And then from that, it's basically the same settings, except I changed on tap to after delay. It automatically does like 800 milliseconds, which is fine. And what that does is you don't have to put any input after you click the button. It just plays this animation string and plays your animation of the circle moving in and out. And that's like pretty much the basics of prototyping. And one last thing that I wanted to cover for the end of this video is design systems, where actually, let's say you want to make multiple circles across your app, but you don't want to make a new gradient every shape you make. So what you can do is you already have this, you know, the radial gradient. You can go over here and click these 4 dots and then go over here and click the plus sign that says new style or new variable. Click on that and then boom, you can actually save this preset. You can save part of your design as a style, warm gradient. I'll name it that. And then I'll create a new style. And then it's put into your library. So let's say you're gonna make a different part of your app. Maybe you want a different shape, make a star. Hold shift, keep it proportionate. We'll drag this count thing to make more points, and you can actually change how deep you want the corners. And boom, you got a new shape. It's not a circle, but you can still add a new style by clicking the 4 dots, and you already see in your library, warm gradient. Boom, added. Saves you so much time. You can do this with colors, with text, with gradients. Possibilities are endless. So let me show you. And you can also do this with text. So you can see this text that I wrote earlier has all these settings: inter font, regular, 9.2, pixel font size. Let's say you want that in all your text throughout the app. You just want to click that same button that you did with the gradient for the text. So you can actually click those 4 buttons again. And these are your text styles. So separate from your color styles, so it's a little more organized. And you can also click that new button and you can put header 1, name it. Boom. And then let's say in your app, you wanted to standardize it, you could take an existing text and then you could make it header 1, which is extremely too big for this scenario, but you can see what I'm getting at. So with all of these intermediate features like auto layout, components, and text and color styles, you really get to streamline your process and really save time with your design, since you're going to be making a bunch of different screens and connecting them. You know, you don't want to change every little thing on every little screen. So it's good to just have like one instance of a design and duplicate it across multiple, so you can edit it across different screens, saving your time. All right, y'all, so that was a brief overview on how to use Figma on the basic tools just to get started. There's a whole lot more to learn, a lot more advanced techniques and stuff that I won't get into in this video, but maybe in the future I'll make a video with the more in-depth features on how I create apps like these. You know, I'm still learning as well, so I'm gonna continue learning my skills, and then I'll come back to you guys and give you all the secret sauce. So, you know, if that sounds good to you, you know, like, comment, and subscribe. Leave a comment, you know, telling me what you guys thought about the video, what you guys want in the future, and stick around the channel if you just want some more design related content. You know, a lot more coming, a lot new stuff. I'm trying to switch it up, so, you know, stay cool and peace.